is proving if Josh proves the breaker here, if Josh turns down the split, there might be a little tension in that car ride back.
So yeah, Anthony, really nice guy. Works really hard for Star City, and it's good to see him out here and making it into the top 4 of this tournament. He doesn't play all that much. We did see him on camera earlier. He was a little nervous. I talked to him after the match. He said the camera made him a little wary. He made a few mistakes, but he shook them off and ended up winning the rest of his matches and drawing the last round in the top 8, winning his quarterfinal match in quick fashion. And on to top 4 against the BBD.
Yeah, so 2 friends playing here in the top 4, and it looks like Anthony is playing black like I suspected. He's playing Selesnya with black.
All right, so that would be junk.
Junk?
I mean, just calling it what we call it in standard, but it's, I don't actually think it has a name. So BBD, not winning the die roll, he actually got to choose the play because he had the higher seed in the Swiss. Leading off with an island. Looks like he has a plains in hand. I don't see a black source just yet. I'm sorry. He's Esper. I haven't seen a black source just yet, but a 2-drop, applying a little bit of beats, not really getting value out of his detainability.
Yeah, he just wants to be he wants to be the aggressor here with his turn to Azorius Arrestor. Just any bear will do.
Yep, and no clue stone from Brian means no black mana source as of yet. No way to really accelerate to his bigger drops. I thought I saw that Zarichi Tiger, although I don't know what's in his hand. I think that is a Zarichi Tiger as well as an island. An inspiration as well, I think, and that Nav Squad Commando.
Yeah, I did walk by BBD during deck building. He did main deck the Zarichi Tiger, so I think he thought his deck was maybe a little weaker to the aggro decks.
Yep, and it looks like BBD has inspiration here at the ready to fire. Not really going to play that Zarichi Tiger to do some tiny beatdowns, as it were. Choosing maybe to draw a card, or draw a couple cards, hopefully draw into black mana source, while Anthony gets a little Extort action while playing an Axebane Guardian, which will allow him access not only to black mana, but an extra mana, along with the Basilica Guards being a defender.
Right, a pretty strong start for Anthony. He has 2 defenders, so he's going to be able to gum up the ground really well here and play any spell he draws with ease.
Yeah, the Axebane Guardian being particularly powerful alongside other defenders, since you are able to add a bunch of mana to your mana pool for each defender. It's a cool mana fixer. It was great in Return to Ravnica Unlimited because it allows you to play multiple colors. The fact that it does have for any color means that you could play 3, 4, 5 colors as long as you've got a bunch of Axebane Guardians, as well as some Guild Gates. But looks like Brian has a swamp into a Syndic of Ties, as well as the protection from Green Bear from Dragon's Maze.
Yeah, and a great turn for him. All of a sudden, he went from a 2/1 to an Extort creature and a Forest Walker.
Yeah, and Inspiration, not necessarily the best card. Woodlock Harlow being that card I was talking about. Sorry about the name. But it looks like Anthony's going pretty big. It looks like he's going to play a 7-drop with a trigger. Is that a Tristani Summoner?
I don't think it is. Let's see if we can get a close-up on that card. I don't recognize the picture.
That might be the Legend, the Paragon.
Oh, is that an Emma Vardis? Emara Vardis?
Yep. Is that the legendary? None of your tokens can take damage?
I believe it is.
All right.
We're going to get it pulled up on the screen for you.
Yeah, that does look like what she is. So 5/7, hefty body, but not a whole lot of action along with the tokens. May prevent some damage. It doesn't look like Anthony really has a whole lot of token action going on though. But it is a 5/7 body, which BBD does have to deal with eventually. Though he does have the protection from green creature to attack with, but he's deciding to attack with it. So
yeah, he decides that 2 for 5 is a good trade. Maybe that means he has other plans for this 5/7.
Yeah, potentially. And it seems strange for him to attack into that Basilica Guards though. But Anthony deciding to take it rather than risking a combat trick that could potentially blow him out. Oh, yeah. Excuse me. The creature does, the Woodlock Hauler does end up has Forest Walk, so he's unable to block with the Basilica Guards. My apologies. These new cards are getting me, man.
Oh yeah, they're tough.
I thought protection from green was good enough. Forest Walk
it probably
too.
would be. It would still be a good card without Forest Walk.
Right. I mean, it's up on the screen. I should probably just read it, right?
So Tithe Drinker added for BBD, as well as that Key Rune, or rather Keystone, Clue Rune.
Clue
I don't
Rune.
know, something like
We'll
that.
just do Clue Runes.
Clue Rune, that's pretty good.
Yeah, but the Tide Drinker allows him to have a lot of extort triggers, coming out now. The Woodlock Crawler, doing that 2 damage a turn. He has 2 creatures here with extort that are really going to do a number on Anthony if he doesn't have a way to really interact with any of them. Looks like he has an Overgrown Tomb that he's going to play untapped here, shocking himself. It looks like he has a Druid's Deliverance in hand. Maybe he has a token generator here to really start doing some work.
I think I maybe see a Trestle Troll. That could be the front card of his hand there, as well as a Stab Wound.
Yep, so Stab Wound going to take care probably of the Woodlock Crawler, and then the Exort trigger from the Basilica Guards, as well as probably the Stab Wound, as well as the Trestle Troll, along with that Stab Wound. So we'll see if that's the line he takes.
Yep, so Trestle Troll plus Extort. And Corrosed Guildmage is that gold card in his hand. That's going to be very powerful.
Yeah, especially with all that extra mana from the Axebane Guardian. It's going to be quite powerful. Corrosed Guildmage able to ultimately, make all of your creatures unblockable, or at least have Intimidate. BBD does have some white creatures, so it's going to be hard to make his big legend unblockable. But he also has the ability to sacrifice things, make a bunch of Saprolings, the legend will also prevent all damage dealt to those Saprolings, so they'll be able to block forever and attack with impunity.
Right, and with that Corrosed Guildmage, Anthony would be able to say, sack his Trestle Troll, then sack his Basilica, his Axebane Guardian, even his Amara for just a ton of tokens. He could flood the board. He could get upwards of 20 tokens if he really wanted to.
Right. I think Anthony may have underestimated, stab wounding right here. A lot of players, they'll save stab wound for a 3/3 or just a larger creature in general, so that they get that continuous 2 points of damage. But Brian, he's content with attacking with his Woodlock Crawler instead of holding it back for the 5/7 from Anthony, which means that BBD's trying to race. And even though Anthony does have a lot of mana as well as the extort from the Basilica Guards, he has to realize that Brian's role in this game is to be the aggressor, and maybe he should think about just killing that Woodlock Crawler with the stab wound, since it is a little bit of situational removal. But that Zerichi Tiger, while it's going to negate a lot of the damage, especially the 2 from the stab wound, putting it on the Zerichi Tiger is not so bad.
Yeah, generally a good rule in Magic, or any game really, is if your opponent is trying to do something, you want to try and stop him from doing that. So if BBD wants to attack, Anthony should figure out, well, BBD's a good player. I should probably be on the defensive here.
Right, and this is especially true in games with a lot of hidden information like Magic.
Yeah.
If you're playing a game like chess, everything's out there. Maybe you can't see exactly what your opponent's trying to do because it's too far ahead. But in a game like Magic where you have a lot of hidden information, your opponent starts turning his guy sideways instead of blocking. He's trading 5 damage for 2 damage. You have to think something's up. And with all these exort triggers from BBD, he's got the Tithe Drinker, the Syndic of Tithes, as well as the Woodlock Crawler, all doing damage that doesn't really involve Anthony with the ability to block. It's going to start to take its toll. Anthony is able to extort each turn and to help negate some of that damage. BBD does have a lot of creatures to block, as well as the Zerichi Tiger.
So it looks like White of Precinct 6 added to the board, plus an extort trigger.
Yep, not too threatening, just a 1/1. Anthony could easily make it a little bit bigger with that stab wound. He's going to cast that here, I think, along with an extort trigger, leaving open green-white. And he's going to put it on the Zerichi Tiger, and instead of killing the Woodlock Crawler, it's just going to try to slowly drain Brian down. But it's going to be a little difficult since Brian does have the Zerichi Tiger to gain 2 life a turn. Since he's not actually gaining life, he's just going to be negating the life from the stab wound. Now Brian actually has a reasonable chump blocker for the big legend that's coming his way.
Right, and you hear all these games about stab wound. Oh wow, my opponent took 22 from my stab wounds, or I dealt him 4 damage in the combat step, and the last 16 was stab wound. But more often than not, it's just right to stab wound the 2/2 or the 2/1.
Yeah, especially if it's something like Woodlock Crawler, who could potentially, gum up your board. Protection from green is pretty huge in a matchup like this. But also, now he's attacking for 2 every turn, just dealing you a ton of damage with that and the extort creatures. He still has the Zerichi Tiger to block and gain 2 life, so it's not looking great for Anthony, even though he does have a lot of powerful cards in play.
Yep, Nav Squad Commando added for BBD plus a pair of extort triggers, just gumming up the ground even further.
Right.
If I was Anthony, I think I would have killed the Woodlock Crawler and concentrated on trying to get as many tokens from that Guild Mage as possible.
Yeah, and BBD, while he has been able to play a spell every turn, has the ability next turn to sack that Azorius Cluestone to draw into another spell to potentially trigger, his 2 extort creatures over the next few turns. If I were BBD, even though Zarichi Tiger does gain life, it's effectively just negating the stab wound at this point, so I would more than likely chump block, with the Tiger, gain 2 life before damage, go up to 16, and put Anthony in the same position he was last turn.
Right, and you see this 5/7 from Anthony.
Right.
Sure, it's edicting BBD every turn, but 7 tokens would be able to attack in so well.
Yeah. I assume that the Crow's the Guild Mage. Anthony does have access to 8 mana now, so he can sacrifice 2 creatures with the Guild Mage and produce a ton of I think it's Sapperling tokens.
Yes.
Just produce a ton of tokens, which could potentially threaten BBD's life if he has some sort of potential overrun effect. It looks like BBD drew Far and Away, I think.
Oof, that would be a great draw for him.
Would it? I mean, all he's really going to bounce is, maybe bounce the 5/7, but then he could just sacrifice it to the Guild Mage in response. It all depends on what Anthony does. The Edict effect is mostly irrelevant, the Unsummon effect being the more potent one at this point. It looks like BBD is going to keep on crashing in with the Tide Drinker, try to get rid of Anthony's last few points, although he's calculating the damage here since the White of Precinct 6 is now a 2/2, and Anthony has the ability to sack both of his walls if he wants to make a ton of Sapperlings.
Right, and so BBD just attacks for 2, puts Anthony to 7, and he'll ship the turn.
Yeah, if we could get the Crows of Guild Mage back on the screen for just 1 second. I'm not sure, I think it's casting cost when you sacrifice
Toughness.
Toughness? Oh, that's even better with the Basilica Guards.
Yeah, so he could have just traded in his Trestle Troll for 4 1/1s, traded in his Basilica Guards, and then eventually traded in that 5/7 too and create an army, and I'm really surprised he's not doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the least used version of, or least usability on the Guild Mage. The Intimidate back in Triple Return or Ravnica Draft was very powerful because you were this black-green deck, and if your opponent was a blue-white deck or a red-white deck, or not red, blue-white deck or a different non-black, non-green deck like Izzet, it was very easy for Crows of Guild Mage to just end the game with any large green creature. It was hard for your opponent to block. Looks like Brian here, content to just chump block. He's at a healthy 16 though, but he knows that Corrosive Guild Mage can deal him a lot of damage. He's potentially going to use Far here, as well as Away. Far targeting his own Nav Squad Commando, and Away targeting Anthony Kando to sacrifice a creature. Now, if Anthony doesn't sacrifice, a creature to Corrosive Guild Mage to make a bunch of Sapperlings, I would be very surprised.
Yeah, this seems like exactly what it's for here. The Guild Mage all he has to do is sack the Trestle Troll, which, frankly, this game isn't going to do anything.
Yeah, and it is important to note the 2 extort triggers from the spell as well. You don't get 4. It is just the 1 card being cast with Fuse, even though both halves of it are being put together. Still only counts as 1 spell on the stack.
Yep, so here we go. Anthony Kando looks like he will be sacking something.
Yeah. You have to pay black-green. He does have a swamp in his hand, so along with the Axebane Guardian, he will be able to activate that ability 2 times.
Yep, so 1, 2, 3, 3 defenders, and he'll tap a plains.
Is it any combination with Axebane? I think it's all just 1 color, so I think he has to tap a forest or an overgrown tomb.
We'll double check on that for you. Oh, any combination of colors.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, even better than I thought was this guy keeps getting better and better. Axebane Guardian, showing how strong he is, allowing Anthony to add a lot of mana to his mana pool, sack the Trestle Troll for 4 1/1s, and that's going to allow him to sack one of those instead of just having to sack one of his other guys.
Right, so Anthony Kando will end up with 6 Sapperlings, and keep in mind that this is still his attack phase.
No, he's only getting 4 here. And then he sacks 1 down to 3, and then he has the option to sacrifice another creature. He only gets the 4 right now.
Yeah, okay, 4 of them, and then he'll sack 1 down to 3. End of turn, he'll be able to use the Guild Mage to maybe get a few more.
Right, and again, he does have Druid's Deliverance in hand, which could really mess up combat for Brian, though those extort triggers are definitely taking their toll on Anthony Kando. But the Far and Away is bouncing the Nav Squad Commando, which is going to come down, drain Anthony for yet another 2. The Druid's Deliverance, while also fogging, will populate those Saplings as well.
Right, and I don't think BBD is going to be playing around Druid's Deliverance. It's not often a main decked card.
Right, but I mean, it's not like too much is happening. You know, he's still going to crash in with his Woodlot Crawler. I think Anthony here, you know, debating on whether or not to use the Crows of Guildmage before BBD gets to draw another card, since BBD just has that one Nav Squad Commando in hand.
Okay, so it looks like he decides not to.
Yep. All right, so BBD here just going to recast his 3/5. Probably drain for 2, attack for 2, putting Anthony to 1. Anthony would be smart here, probably to cast his Druid's Deliverance to prevent the 2 damage and gain a Saproling.
Right, it's not going to get any better than this. He's not going to prevent any more than 2 this game, and yeah, he makes the right play. Prevents the 2, gets a Saproling.
Yep, and now he's still got the option, again, to sacrifice another defender. I don't think he has enough with what's in play to kill BBD before BBD is going to be able to kill him, although that is going to be a lot of Saprolings. He can freely block 2 of them with the Commando and the Syndic of Tides, but, you know, he does have the Tide Drinker also to block and gain life in combat, though he doesn't really want to. Alright, well, Anthony declining to make more Saprolings to get on the super offensive. You know, it looks like he has a Swamp in hand. Can't see what he drew. Looks like maybe a...
I'm not sure what that card is. It looks like a Dragon's Maze card, but either way, Corrosive Guildmage is probably going to be better than most anything he draws from this point forward. He just has to make a ton of tokens to kill BBD ASAP.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe he's, you know, overvaluing his, is it Emma Tardis?
Tardis, yep.
Yeah, his Emma Tardis. If he had just sacrificed that, he'd have 11 tokens here to crash in against BBD, which would be pretty powerful. You know, BBD can really only block 2 of them, would be taking 9 just this turn. And, you know, if he starts if he had been sacrificing his Basilica Guards earlier, maybe even his White of Precinct 6, just to produce more tokens to make it harder for BBD to play defense, Anthony, I think, could have taken this game, but it looks like it's going to slip away from him over the next few turns.
Yeah, the only thing that BBD has to do is attack 1 more time and play 1 more spell, or if he bricks again, just attack twice, and that's it.
Yeah, so Anthony, if he had taken a different line with that Corrosive Guildmage, may be able to push through the last few points. I think he's contemplating here giving his at least one of his creatures Intimidate, so maybe try to get some more damage, maybe contemplating the spell in his hand that we don't know about.
Yep, unfortunately for him, the Amara rather, she's a white creature, and BBD's creatures are all white, so there's no way she's getting through. Probably more likely to be something like a White of Precinct 6, or the Guildmage himself.
Right. And unfortunately for Anthony, even if he does try to go all in with something like that, ooh,
oh, wow.
That's the Maw of the Obsidian.
What a rip from Anthony
Kando.
With
all of those Saproling tokens with the Corrosive Guildmage, so now he can sack the Amara Tardis, give all of his creatures +7/+7, including his Saprolings.
No, yeah, I see what you're saying. You were shortcutting there. Sack the Amara, sack to the Maw. I was confused. It's late.
You know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the Corrosive Guildmage along with the Maw of the Obsidian, just incredibly powerful. And I actually don't know how to calculate this damage. If he had been sacrificing like the Basilica Guards like a little earlier, he would have an extra 4 Saprolings in play at this point to really deal BBD an outrageous amount of damage.
Yeah, so it looks like this will be lethal unless BBD can Jedi Mind Trick Anthony into not going all in here, because BBD, all he has is a land. So if I'm BBD, I'm going to start tapping my lands, maybe picking them up, setting 2 aside, just anything to convince Anthony that I have a spell.
Yeah, I mean, that does work on occasion. A lot of times that little, fake bluff where you might have something can give away the fact that you don't. More people will play closer to the vest whenever they have something. They don't want to give away too much information. So if you Hollywood, which is what people call it, like you start to cast your card, you maybe tap 2 mana or something. People, they're like, why would he do that? He's too good of a player to
right.
just give away something like that. So looks like BBD here is just dead unless Anthony just makes some brutal mistake with his Maw of the Obsidian.
and we'll see how BBD blocks here. He's going to throw the Tide Drinker in front of the white.
Yeah, he has to block a lot, you know, and like again, Anthony can just sacrifice the Amara Tardis to the Crows the Guildmage, making 7 Saprolinks and then sacking them all to the Maw of the Obstacle, giving his entire team +7/+7 with those 3 unblocked Saprolinks. That's going to be enough damage. And if he's heads up, he'll sacrifice the white of the Precinct 6 to the Maw of the Obstacle as well, which will prevent the 2 life gain from the lifelink on the Tide Drinker, as well as pump his team even more. He can also just sacrifice his Basilica Guard, sacrifice his untapped token, sacrifice his Axebane Guardian, and the Maw of the Obstacle itself. So it's, I mean, this is looking like, you know, around 40 damage if he really decides to go all in, and that's even if he doesn't, you know, do a whole lot other than just sacrifice what's in play. You know, if he doesn't see the Guildmage activation first or something.
Right. So this looks to be BBD's blocks. He certainly took enough time on it. Maybe he convinced Anthony that he has something.
Yeah. So 3 creatures unblocked. Anthony needs to make them all at least 7, while also sacrificing the white of Precinct 6. It's not very hard as long as he activates the Guildmage to sacrifice the Amara Tardis to make 7 1/1s.
So Anthony just doing the math here. He does not want to mess up. He wants to make sure that this is the last turn of the game.
Yeah, so he sees it. He's going to activate that Guildmage, sacrificing something. Ooh, no. Alright, so he's just going to make 4 guys, and, you know, he can still sack the Axebane Guardian and all the other creatures that blocked, so, or they got blocked, rather. So I think it's still going to be enough. So, you know, he's sacrificing the 4 Saprolings from the Guildmage, along with Axebane Guardian, Penguin. Okay, so
Okay.
he taps 3 lands, throws his land on the table after Anthony announces sacrificing 1 billion creatures to Maw of the Obstacle, really showing the power of Crows the Guildmage and Maw of the Obstacle there, especially on a stalled board.
What a combo. You know, it seemed like Anthony missed his window, but maybe he had the Maw of the Obstacle the whole time. Maybe he drew it. I'm not quite sure, but either way, he dealt, like you said, he could have dealt 40 damage on that last turn.
Yeah, I mean, if he had just seen the play of sacking the Amara Tardis, you know, the turn before, he would have had 7 more Saprolings in play. That's right. 11 attackers with just the Saprolings, not to mention the white of Precinct 6, the Crows the Guildmage, you know, and then being able to just play them all at the Obstacle and sack all the guys that aren't blocked.
Right.
Or sack the guys that are blocked to pump the guys that aren't blocked, and that's...
Forget Trinity Force, that's tons of damage right there. So
basically Collective Blessing,
yeah,
you know, plus 1,000. Alright, well, it looks like it's trivia time once again.
I love trivia time.
Alright, and this is going to greatly benefit those of you guys who've been watching the broadcast for the last few hours.
Yes.
Alright, so Zach, why don't you take this one away?
Alrighty, so if you guys were watching the last round, you know that we coined
Swiss.
The last round of Swiss. You would know that we coined a nickname for a certain rare from Dragon's Maze, a certain vampire actually. He might drink minds. I don't know. I forget exactly what he does, but
you just gave away half the name. What's wrong with you?
So, what rare creature from Dragon's Maze is also known as, Todd?
Slobodon Melosa Vampire.
Slobodon Melosa Vampire. New nickname. You know what? Just like Whoop, let's make that trend on Twitter.
I don't think Whoop's going to trend.
Probably not much chance
of
that.
Yeah, but, you know, he does drink minds, so you did give away most of the name of the card anyway, so if you really want to know the answer and you want to win 6 months of trivia, Google it.
Yep, and make sure you use SCG Premium. That is the hashtag you have to have, or else you will not be counted towards the drawing.
Yep, and you know, if you do put that in before this semi-final round is over, you do have a chance to win that 6 month of premium.
Right.
Have great access to some of the best content for Magic on the internet today. Brad Nelson, Jerry Thompson, myself, Brian Kibler, Tom Martell, lots of great names. Yeah, Sam Black, great guys, great players. You know, all of which, except for me, who will be at the Pro Tour this week.
It's okay,
so,
Todd.
yeah.
Next one.
Yeah. So, yeah. So put that answer in if you know it. You know, write down Slobodon Melosa Vampire. If you don't, you might get credit.
Maybe.
Partial credit at least.
Yeah, partial credit, maybe a few days of Star City Premium. But for the 6 months,
a few days.
You have to have the full name.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the trivia question. We're going to be moving here into Game 2 between Braun-Duin and Anthony Kando. Looks like we finally got some deck lists.
How about that?
Took a while. Jeez.
So here we go. Anthony Kando, Braun-Duin. This is our match.
All right. So we saw most of BBD's deck already in the draft. It seemed pretty easy what he was going to put into his deck. Let's take a look at Anthony's deck, see if he has anything really important. Looks like Joshua Snyder actually took down game 1 against... It was Joshua Snyder, right? Yeah, Joshua Snyder does take down game 1 against Chris Van Meter. If BBD's match finishes with Anthony before theirs does, we will be switching to that, give you more coverage of their match. We will be giving you updates in the meantime.
Yep, to give you guys a little bit of an update on Anthony Kando's deck, some heavy hitters from him. He has a Primordial in his deck. He has the green Primordial, the Sylvan. He also has an Urbis Protector, the one that BBD passed on. So he has a few fatties. He has a main deck Purge the Profane, so he'll be able to make BBD discard if he so chooses. Other than that, though, it's pretty standard. He has some Brush Striders, he has some Centaur Healers, a main deck Mending Touch, it's kind of interesting, and 2 Maw of the Obsidian.
2 Maw of the Obsidian. You know, if he gets some Maw of the Obsidian going with that Corrosive Guildmage again, I don't see how Brian's going to really handle it, because he doesn't have a spot removal spell to really take care of it. I think Brian is on the mold of 6 here. Looks like we're good to start game 2. Dimir Guildgate with, it looks like he has the Plains in hand, so it looks like his mana is pretty decent. Well, actually no, he drew an Azorius Key Rune, so I think he does have access to white, though Plains is not it. Anthony's hand, not looking so bad. Does have that Maw of the Obsidian. Doesn't have a 2-drop though to start things off. Actually, it has both the Obsidians, both the Maws of the Obsidian, Purge the Profane, and
I think that might have been an Executioner swing in his hand as well.
It's possible. That card is particularly strong against the Crawler that BBD played in game 1. That was really putting a beating to Anthony. That Forest Walk was pretty important. Verdant Haven from Anthony, sending him 22 and allow him to start casting those Maws of the Obsidian turn early.
Yep, so both players with a 3-mana Accelerator here. We'll see what BBD can do with his.
Alright, there's a Tide Drinker and a Azorius Guildgate and a pass. Hopefully for BBD, that Extort trigger is going to be able to gain him a bunch of life and potentially pressure Anthony's life total, though that Maw of the Obsidian being a 3/3 is going to brick wall most of the 2/2s from Brian's deck, and he does have a lot of them.
Yeah, he does. The Tide Drinker is not going to be doing much life linking with that Maw in play. We'll see what BBD can do to go bigger than the Maw.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, the Tide Drinker could just run up the pedestal and jump right into its stomach.
That's a reasonable line of play for that Drinker.
Yeah, should Brian decide to try to bluff, Anthony just calls and puts his 3/3 in front of the Tide Drinker. I think that's exactly what we're gonna see. It's dinner time. So just another Cluestone from Brian, giving him access to potential couple cards, as well as the Extort trigger from the
This is going to be brutal. Profane, or Purge of the Profane, going to discard both of BBD's cards. He's going to get to save one by cracking the Cluestone.
Right. If he's wanting to crack the Cluestone, he should go ahead and do it right now just to get a little more information. He does have enough cards in hand so that he will be able to keep one, whichever one is the best. It really depends on whether or not the card that he had other than that land was better than a random card off the top.
Right. So BBD would love to keep something like a Diluvian Primordial, a Skyline Predator, just something big. And
he discards a small creature, which is fine, in a swamp. Another Tide Drinker to the bin, and I don't know what he kept, but he's going to take some beats down to 18, it looks like.
Yeah. So BBD, we'll see if he can slam something like a Primordial here.
All right. And I think Anthony waited long enough to play his Forest. I think he might have been trying to play around that Crawler from last game, since it did beat him down quite easily.
Right.
I felt like maybe, BBD hasn't cast it yet, so it's probably not going to be that much of a problem. Even so, go and play this Overgrown Tomb tap so I don't take that 2 damage. It might end up mattering in the long run. And this is actually pretty interesting. Ooh, and there's the Primordial, which is going to flashback that Purge the Profane on Anthony.
Very strong. Let's get the Diluvian Primordial up on the screen there so you guys can see what that does.
Right. Yeah, so Diluvian Primordial, very similar to Chancellor of the Annex, a card from New Phyrexia a couple of years ago, which, had a different ability at the beginning of the game, but when Dueling Mind Primordial comes into play, it allows BBD to play an instant or sorcery from Anthony's graveyard without paying its mana cost, and basically lets him rebuy that Persia Profane that just wrecked his hand. Anthony losing a couple cards, but it looked like he had some to give. Probably just going to follow it up here with, looks like a Cluestone.
Okay,
and
it's a start.
I guess he has, he's going to save that Executioner swing for BBD's Diluvian Primordial. So BBD going to get in for 5 and then lose his guy. Sacking that Cluestone, trying to draw into some action.
Yep, and it's pretty nice that BBD does this pre-combat, because this is going to let him draw into any kind of counterspell to counter the Executioner swing, maybe a combat trick in case Anthony has something else too.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of funny. If you saw last turn, Anthony decided to attack with his Maw of the Obsidian, which dealt Brian 3 damage, but then the subsequent attack from the Tide Drinker after he was tapped out allowed BBD to recoup 2 of that, so effectively only dealing 1 damage to Brian, but dealing 2 damage to Anthony. And maybe that's a trade-off he's willing to make, since he has gained some life from that Verdant Haven, as well as that Persia Profane. But, in the grand scheme of things, when you do that, you're actually losing a point of life in the long run. So if you're focused way more on, getting your opponent dead, it's a decent play, but it's something you should definitely consider when making that decision.
Right, and here comes the second Maw, so BBD with a 2/1 lifelink Extort facing down 2 3/3 Maws. And we'll see what he has. A Nav Squad Commando or something that's like would be so
there's
good.
At least a 6-drop. Yep, there's an Asperia with an Extort trigger, so
Boom.
that's going to put Anthony down to 15, Brian up to 20, and a 6/4 Asperia Flyer with a sweet ability. Whenever Anthony decides to attack, it's going to let Brian draw some cards. So it looks like we have an update from our other semifinal match. Joshua Snyder defeats Chris Van Meter 2-0. And this knocks Chris Van Meter out of the tournament into the top 4, though. So, a reasonable consolation prize and a couple $100.
Yeah.
And by couple hundred, I think like 600.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
More than a couple.
Yeah.
For a 130-person sealed deck, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and so continuing with the action here, well, that's a pretty good answer to an Asperia. We have a Sylvan Primordial, destroying one of Brian's lands, and then searching up one for Anthony. That's not that relevant. However, the fact that it's a 6/8 with reach is very relevant against, Brian's gigantic flyer, the Asperia. So that's, brick walling his only source of damage at the moment, other than the 1 point of Extort per turn. Really, and I think this is a pretty aggressive attack from Anthony. He gets to give BBD 2 cards, and in order to kill that Asperia, he's going to have to sack either one of his Maws. BBD, could just take the 6 damage, which he is opting to do since he's still at 20.
Yeah, it's an interesting trade for him. 6 damage for 2 cards.
Yeah, and I think he was really wanting BBD to block with his Asperia, and he was willing to trade both of his Maws of the Obsidian for the Asperia. It's also kind of interesting that he tapped out before attacking, not really representing more than a Slaughterhorn or a Giant Growth on that single green mana.
At first I really didn't like that play from Anthony, but looking through his deck list, he really has no other ways to deal with that Asperia. I don't think he has a single way to kill it besides Executioner swing.
I mean, that's fair, but you could just wait until you have enough to kill him, since you do have the Maws of the Obsidian in play. Just wait to draw that Guild Mage, wait to draw a few more creatures so that you can make an Alpha Strike. Hopefully Brian doesn't have, something really big. Apparently, Anthony does have 1 Merciless Eviction in his deck list, though, so he could draw that if the Asperia starts to get out of control, if Brian has the answer to a few of Anthony's creatures, or, if Anthony just doesn't have a lot else going on, or a way to actually stop that 6/4 flyer other than the Primordial, should it get taken out of the equation.
Right, so Anthony Kando has no more kill spells in his deck except that Merciless Eviction.
Alright, well, Anthony swinging in again with these Maws of the Obsidian. He could attack with the Primordial as well. That's representing a lot of damage.
Very aggressive.
Yeah, so Brian's going to get to draw 3 cards before making any decisions, and Brian has a couple things he can draw here to really punish Anthony. I think he has Downsize as a potential way to punish him. I think he has a Far and Away in hand, which it looks like that's the card on the far right before he flipped. So he can bounce one Maw the Obsidian or the Sylvan Primordial and make him sacrifice a different creature. He can also block first, and this is going to put Anthony in a position where if he sacrifices a creature, Brian's able to bounce the Maw the Obsidian that's being blocked, and then force the Edict after that, and then it's a complete destruction of every resource that Anthony has at the moment. All he has to follow it up with is looks like a White of Precinct 6, as well as a Basilica Guards. And I do believe that Anthony should have played at least one of those pre-combat to be able to sack to the Maw the Obsidian, so he didn't have to sack the other Maw the Obsidian, because now he's going to lose both of them, basically.
Right, well, one thing's for sure, after this combat, that White of Precinct 6 will be a little scarier than it was.
I mean, that's true, but Brian now has a full grip thanks to the Asperia. So yeah, he decided to sack that Maw the Obsidian, and Brian's sure let that resolve. We'll bounce the Maw the Obsidian and make you sacrifice your Sylvan Primordial. Completely down with that. Not to mention X-Door for 1 with little cherry on top.
Value.
a ding, if you will. And now it looked like a game that Anthony was very far ahead thanks to that Sylvan Primordial. It looks like he just gave it away by giving Brian, 5 free cards and then sacking his Maw the Obsidian before playing his creatures pre-combat. He's just in a tough spot now, and I don't think that the few points of export, those few things, those few points of extort are really going to matter when BBD also has extort. So.
Yep. So right now, the board 1/4 Basilica Guard for Anthony, as well as the Maw, and for BBD he has the 2/1 Tithe Drinker and the Asperia, but now has a full grip to work with.
Yeah, and those extra 5 cards definitely helping BBD, who was basically out of resources after that Purge the Profane. He had that Primordial, which got Executioner swinged, followed by the Asperia, which got brickwalled by the Sylvan Primordial, but Anthony really put himself in a position to lose to Far and Away, which he knows is in BB's deck. He played it last game, as well as he was able to look at the deck list before it happened. Now we got a Holy Mantle on the Tide Drinker, and that's going to be a 4/3 unblockable lifelink, as well as the 6 power flyer from BBD coming in. So 10 total damage there, as well as the trigger from Extort, really putting Anthony in a bind. He has to have, a whole lot here, and it looks like he's about to just... Well, I guess he's sacrificing the the Basilica Guard, deal 1 extra damage, followed by... does he have the Merciless Eviction?
That would be something here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think this is it.
Oh, wow. Well, there we go. Merciless Eviction on creatures. This is going to take care of everything that Brian has, as well as everything Anthony has. But unlike unlike Anthony, Brian has a full grip. Anthony just left with that White of Precinct 6.
Yeah, it looks like BBD now in an almost unlosable situation. He has 5 spells in hand to Anthony Kando's White of Precinct 6, and BBD should be able to wrap this up with his opponent at 3 life.
Right, and a little bit of non-bow with White of Precinct 6. Merciless Eviction actually exiles the creatures, so even though a lot of things died, they were putting the exiles on, and he's only, I think, a 2/2 or a 3/3. There's a Tithe Drinker and that Diluvian Primordial. Everything else was exiled, and BBD's played a bunch of spells and not a whole lot else.
Right. So it looks like BBD's going to start with Cluestone. 1, 2, 3. There it is.
Right, well, he's passing the turn. Oh, he's probably got Skyline Predator.
Yeah, there you see it.
He's going to take a couple points here from the attack by Anthony. The Skyline Predator matches up pretty well. That Trestle Troll has reach, man. So BB's plan of end of turn Skyline Predator to attack for lethal stymied a little bit by Anthony's Trestle Troll. So Brian really needs to put a couple more creatures on the play. Then Anthony's probably going to go back on the defense. We'll really see what happens as this game unfolds.
Right, so here we see BBD's main phase. He has a ton of mana available to him. His opponent at 3 life. He just has to figure out how to deal these last 3 points, and he might be starting with Sarichi Tiger.
And you have to think how good of a position would Anthony be in this game if he had just not attacked for those few points of damage with this Maw the Obsidian, with his Sylvan Primordial. If he had just waited for Brian to play a little, a few more cards, and then, wait to draw that Merciless Eviction, really punish Brian for trying to win the game, overextending on the board, and then, maybe playing a few creatures after that. But by attacking first, he gave Brian access to a full grip after he cast his Wrath effect, and now Brian's able to recoup very easily.
Right, and it's it's pretty interesting. It seems like Anthony Kando does not have the inevitability in this matchup, but I think with the Corrosive Guildmage and the Maws of the Obsidat that he does, I think if he just waited around for long enough, he would have won eventually.
Yeah, so Stealer of Secrets as well as a Windrake here from Brian, really putting the needles to Anthony. It's going to be hard for him really to come back from this, though. The game's not over by any stretch of the means. Anthony has a couple draws that Corrosive Guildmage. While Brian does have a few power with the flyers, the Corrosive Guildmage could present a very reasonable clock, since all of Brian's cards are blue and they can't block if he decides to give something Intimidate, or if he decides just to make a bunch of Saprolings. He really needs one more answer to a flyer here. Otherwise, the Windrake plus Skyline Predator are going to take away the last points of Anthony's in the next 2 turns.
Yep. Now, keep in mind that Anthony does have a Druid's Deliverance available to him in the deck, so he has 1 fog effect. That could be a potential blowout if it gets that far.
Right.
So Anthony Kando not cracking his key rune. It's a little awkward because most of his white sources are tied up Plains and Verdant Haven. Hopefully he'll do that at the end of turn, maybe draw into a few more options.
Right. And again, another small trap that a lot of the newer players, or more inexperienced players, will fall into is that if a card can be used at instant speed, they're more apt to use it on their opponent's turn, because they've been taught that by other people. Like, oh well, I have this card draw spell, I'm going to wait till my opponent's incept to cast it. And when your opponent is tapped out, or if you just need to draw into something, with that clue stone, then you shouldn't. And I think you see here Anthony does have that fog, and I think that is what he cast there. But if you have something, just because it says you can use it instant speed doesn't mean you have to use it on your opponent's turn. In this case, sacrificing that clue stone to draw a card, potentially draw into another threat or potentially an answer, was much better than just waiting until the end of turn.
Right. So the keystone, or rather the clue rune. I'm just going to keep saying keystone. It that way.
Right. So too many creatures for Anthony to deal with. That's game 2 after a long, hard-fought battle from Brian. Looked like he was pretty far behind after that Sylvan Primordial came down. Anthony being very aggressive against that Asperia to deal a few points of damage. Really put Drine in the driver's seat.
Spoonerisms abound.
Yeah. So let Brian recoup very easily from that merciless eviction. Play 4 or 5 creatures, whereas Anthony was just stuck with 2, one of which couldn't even attack, and Brian very easily took over the game.
Yep. So the players going back to their sideboard now. You see BBD gives Anthony the stare down there. I wonder if I wonder what he's thinking about. Maybe trying to figure out what Anthony sided in, his own sideboard plan. But it looks like BBD is just going to be content to make one little switch, tweak, maybe change his deck up just a bit, make it match up a little better against Anthony Kando's Maws. Now, you have to keep in mind that we have full access to the deck list, but BBD doesn't. And as far as he knew before this game, Anthony Kando just had 1 Maw of the Obsidat. Now that he's seen 2, he probably wants as many instant speed tricks as possible to muck with combat math.
Yeah, and this is going to be a pretty sweet game 3, hopefully. Really don't want either players to mulligan. I want a hard-fought battle from both sides. Anthony's deck, when working on all cylinders, does a lot of cool stuff. Brian has a lot of big threats that Anthony doesn't have a whole lot of answers to. So, we could see, Asperia fighting off against 12 Saprolings or something, and Brian gets to draw 12 cards. Right. Maybe, play a couple of Bluster Squalls, a couple of downsize type effects. Really, show Anthony the business. But yeah, it should be pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I really hope that BBD sided in that downsize. He started the Bluster Squall in the main and the downsize in the sideboard. I think that the downsize versus the Maws are way more powerful against Anthony, and I'm betting BBD made that switch as well.
Well, I think both are fairly powerful. If you expect your opponent to try to play a bunch of creatures and then they go to their attack step, you can use Bluster Squall, tap everything down, and that gives you a free turn to just attack with everything. Sure, you don't get to bowl them out as badly, but if something happens like the Guildmage did in game 1, a Bluster Squall is not enough.
Right.
Or, I'm sorry, a downsize is not enough.
You have 40 damage.
Yeah, the -4. Anthony may have missed being able to sacrifice his Amara Tardis to deal an extra 9-ish damage, since he would have gotten 7 Chaplains as opposed to the 4 from the Basilica Guards. If he, figures that little combination of things out, then could be bad news for Brian.
So it looks like the players are drawing their 7, trying to decide on mulligans. And let's hope they both keep.
All right. So Anthony, I think, is taking a trip to Mulligan Town.
But unfortunately for him, he has to go to 6, but at least he'll be on the draw. So if he does get mana screwed in any way, he'll have even more chances to draw out of it. And, you know, being on the draw versus BBD's deck, it's not the end of the world. BBD does have a few 2-1s for 2 and a few 2-2s for 2, but he can't put on the supreme pressure that something like a Rakdos deck would be able to.
Yeah, I mean, neither deck is super aggressive. You know, as you said, Brian does have those 2 drops, but they're also various colors, and Brian does have to draw the right combination of lands in the opening turns to be able to cast them on time to cause that pressure to force Anthony into you know, a bad situation. But it's unlikely that Brian is going to have, you know, a whole lot of pressure early in the game due to the vast variety of the colors in his deck. Looks like Anthony does have a Merciless Eviction in his hand as well as a couple lands. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started with that game. Alright, so a Guildgate from Anthony to start off with. I see a Swamp in hand, so it looks like he's going to have good mana. Brian without a Guildgate, but a full grip didn't mulligan, so hopefully he's got some good stuff going on. Looks like a Tide Drinker coming down, black and white. Could have been a Syndic of Tides, I suppose, but he does have 2 Tide Drinkers. As well as a Syndic of Tides, a lot of 2-mana extort creatures, a lot of pressure early. It looks like he drew into an island if he was lacking that blue source. That's pretty good. But yeah, the swings from Brian's Tide Drinker are pretty strong here. You know, going up 2 points a turn from that 2 life from the lifelink as well as the extort triggers is gonna, you know, really put Brian in a greater position later in the game. He's going to have a little bit more padding if it comes down to a race, a little bit of protection from a Mob Obstidot, and there's a Stealer of Secrets from Brian. Now, this guy is poised to steal the game away, should Anthony not have a way to handle it, and it looks like his hand is just 4 lands and a Merciless Eviction, so Brian's going to get at least 2 free draws out of this you know, Stealer of Secrets before Anthony's able to deal with it. It really just depends on whether or not Brian wants to keep overextending onto the board, but he does have at least 1 more turn before that Merciless Eviction is going to come down. Second Tide Drinker from BBD along with an Extort trigger is going to put Anthony all the way down to 13, putting Brian up to 25. Anthony draws for the turn. Looks like a Cluestone. Turn too late to accelerate him into his Merciless Eviction. Brian going to get a little more life. You know, a couple more another card out of that Stealer Secrets, and yeah, it's looking really good for BBD, though there is a Merciless Eviction in Anthony's hands, so next turn he is going to be able to sweep the board, even though Brian's going to be at around 29 to 30 life, depending on if he gets to extort another time. But I think Brian knows the jig's up. You know, he saw Merciless Eviction last game. Anthony's not really doing anything, so even though he's got a whole grip of cards, he's just going to pass turn, content with Anthony at 7 life.
Yeah, and it seems like BBD a little sly. You know, he knows this thing before his opponent mulligans. He doesn't play any spells. Easy to think, sure, he has all lands, but the Scatter Art comes down.
Scatter Art
for the
and
full.
I want to say that's Game Boys, and
wow.
And there's the handshake. So Braun-Duin citing in that Scatter Art, and that was that 1 card that he cited in. It looked like,
yeah.
And you know, he saw that Merciless Eviction. That was the stare down. You know,
he
was giving him the Google eyes before.
He said, "Am I really gonna get you with this card?"
Yeah.